The Detroit Pistons are hopeful of utilizing the 2015 NBA Draft to accelerate the rebuilding process. I had the opportunity to speak with Vince Ellis, who covers the team for the Free Press, to get the latest on what the Pistons are thinking at 8 and the rest of their offseason forecast. Good afternoon, Vince, and welcome to the Two-Man Advantage. We're a podcast. We're ready to talk some Pistons basketball with you this afternoon.
Glad to be here.
So, Vince, you can't start talking about the Pistons without talking about their propensity for making trades. I think they've made like 4 since October. So can you just tell me how you think their activity on the trade market will affect their draft plans on Thursday?
And talking to Stan Van Gundy and Jeff Bauer, general manager Jeff Bauer today, more than likely there won't be any whole lot of trading between now and the draft time. The price of trading up in the draft is too high. If you just look at the roster, any basic understanding of how trading up works, trading, what it would take to be to trade up, would if you look at the roster, they probably don't have a whole lot of assets when it comes to trading up. But if they want to trade up, if they gave up Andre Drummond, they'd like to trade up. If they gave up a future first-round pick, they could trade up. So, but when you look at the rest of the roster, Jody Nick is not going to let you trade up into the draft. I would even argue maybe you could make a case maybe for KCP, but I would doubt that even he would let a team would give up a pick just so the Pistons swap spots with the Pistons. So anybody with any understanding of how trading up works could tell you that trading up would not be a likely possibility for the Pistons. But they didn't leave open the possibility of trading back. When you look at the group of small forwards, it's Kelly Oubre or Stanley Johnson or even Sam Decker. Maybe they would move back for one of those guys. But again, you'd have to give somebody would have to give up an asset to move up to draft ahead of you, and you have to be confident that the guy that you like will be there wherever you move back to. Jeff Bauer said it probably best. There's a lot of rumor making, a lot of rumor mongering, but at the end of the day, typically in the NBA draft, everybody just stays where they are, and everybody just picks from there.
And the Pistons are also in desperate need of a small forward. I know that they've had a revolving door of small forwards there. Sam Decker was recently in, and they've also worked out Stanley Johnson from Arizona. So can you give me an idea of what direction the Pistons may be thinking with the 8th pick on Thursday?
Well, it's pretty easy. They don't have a small forward. They're the only small forward they really have on the roster right now is Cartier Martin. So common sense would dictate that they're going to take a small forward, and then they're going to probably sign another one in free agency. They pretty much are telegraphing it. If you look at their roster, anybody who looks at the roster will tell you that a small forward is where they're headed. The guys I listed to you earlier, they're all small forwards. I didn't mention Mario Hezonja or Justice Winslow because there seems to be an increasing likelihood that they'll be gone. But if one of those guys falls to them, they'd be probably ecstatic. I can see them possibly taking Devin Booker, possibly with the shooting guard out of Kentucky. If they view him as like a star or something like that. But it's going to probably more than likely be a small forward with the possibility of Devin Booker being a dark horse. 18 years old, maybe just take a flyer on him, and then, they wouldn't feel any pressure to play him a whole lot next year, considering the fact they have KCP and Jody Meeks. But so there you go. They'll probably take a small forward, though.
And they recently signed Ilyasova, or they traded with Milwaukee to get him, and really gave up some spare parts in order to get him. And Stan Van Gundy made a point of saying that was a player they coveted for a long time. So can you tell me, do you think it'll be an insurance policy, assuming that Greg Monroe leaves, and what does Ilyasova bring to the roster?
Insurance policy if you haven't been reading my reporting. My reporting has said there's no way Greg Monroe's coming back here. They can play lip service to that stuff. He's gone. That pretty much was still last offseason when he signed that qualifying offer. As far as like what he brings a stretch forward, a guy who the Pistons believe will ultimately bring out the best Snyder Drummond, a guy who can spread the floor, shoots three. They think he's a little bit more than a three-point shooter because they think he can put the floor on a little bit, make the extra pass. One of the things I never really thought about Ilyasova really in the past is that they say it brings a toughness to him as well. So we'll all see. But as far as like an insurance policy as Greg Monroe, I would say it was more like a move because they knew Greg Monroe was leaving. That it was not an insurance policy. They made the move because they know that ship has sailed.
And in terms of through your reporting, can you give me an update on the Pistons' prospects of possibly moving back downtown?
I would just say there's been some kind of overblown reports in there, like it's Tom Gore's dream to move downtown. That's not what I gather. There's a problem with the Pistons moving downtown is that they have a arena in Auburn Hills that they spent $60 million upgrading. There's talk that, this will just become the Auburn Hills will just become a concert venue, but I would argue that you're taking away 41 night games from the Auburn Hills. This new arena downtown, and when it's open, it's going to take away some of the Palace's concert business just by very nature. It'll be another world-class, cool arena. So if you take away 41 home dates, then you take away another, however it cuts into the Palace business, take away another X amount of number of concert dates, get to the point where why do you even need Palace? That would eventually happen. So I've been told that this is Platinum Equity and Tom Gores, and those folks are not going to let the Palace go the way of the Pontiac Silverdome. So I wouldn't close the door to Pistons moving downtown, but I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
And in terms of Tom Gores himself, he's on the team now for a little over 2 years. I think he came in with some grand promises and some bold predictions, but it hasn't really translated onto the results on the court. So I'm just wondering how beneficial having Stan Van Gundy will be for turning the Pistons around, and just your general impressions of his ownership so far.
I think people talking about team owners is one of the most overrated, overblown things in professional sports. I would use Dan Gilbert as an example. What has Dan Gilbert done that's so special to get the Cleveland Cavaliers to the NBA Finals twice?
Not much.
Exactly. What great thing he did? He happened to buy a franchise that was 40 minutes away from probably the transcendent player of our era. So he did nothing to get the Cavaliers into being a successful franchise. Because the moment this transcendent player left for 4 years, the Cavaliers were awful. And the moment that transcendent player came back, they became good again. As far as Tom Gores, the only thing I would say you can judge an owner on is the people he hires. He hires good people and the willingness to spend money. We have no idea about Tom Gores hiring practice. Certain fact, he was with Joe Dumars for the first 3 years of his stewardship, and now he just pushed over to Stan Van Gundy. Obviously, that has not been written yet about Stan Van Gundy yet. Obviously, it's a Stan Van Gundy hire both up in his face, then we could start getting an idea that he's not doing a very good job. But this, like I said, the only thing I think you should judge owners on is basically the people they hire and the willingness to spend money, because a lot of this other stuff that people say owners do and stuff, that's just luck. It's just luck. They hire the right guy, and the guy up under them somehow makes the right decisions. But like I would even say, like I would use this as an example. Bill Davidson, the former Piston owner, has this great reputation for being this awesome owner around here, and you got to give him credit. 3 NBA championships, so you cannot take that away from him. But if you look back at those 2002 to 2008 teams, it was obvious that team, looking back, in hindsight, it's obvious that team needed something, needed an extra something, and maybe that extra something would have got them over the hump and got them a second championship, and we'd be looking at the era entirely different. But during that time, the Pistons never went into the luxury tax, because that was Bill Davidson's mandate. Do not go into the luxury tax. So you can deem Bill Davidson on the fact that when push came to shove, and it was time to extend that championship streak or get another championship, he didn't cut the checks. So there you go.
And in terms of Stan Van Gundy himself, his first season here started at 32 and 50. So obviously it wasn't the result they were hoping for, but there seems to be a general consensus within the organization that the Pistons are headed in the right direction. So I'm wondering if you could give me just your thumbnail on his first season as Pistons head coach, and where you think the Pistons are headed under his leadership.
They were 38-52, and I don't know where they're headed under his leadership. I'm not one of those guys that makes grand predictions. I report what happens. I try to analyze what happens, but I know people nowadays don't say I don't know enough, okay? Because people ask a question and they feel like they have to answer some way definitively. We have no idea what's going to happen with the team in the future. If for me to sit here and pretend like I know what's going to happen with the Pistons next summer, I'd be doing a disservice to your listeners. But I'll just tell you, I don't know. We'll have a discussion next year this time, and we'll talk about what actually happened.
You can't analyze something until it actually happens. That's right. So,
exactly.
So, Pistons, one of the biggest trades they made during this season last year was getting Reggie Jackson from Oklahoma City. So I'm wondering if you could tell me the importance of his growth and development in Stan Van Gundy's system in particular, if the Pistons are to make a prolonged run at the playoffs again.
Well, he's the main guy. Him along with Andre Drummond have become the most important players in this franchise. If Reggie Jackson turns out to be the player that the Pistons think he could be, which is a borderline top 10 point guard, they're set there for the next 4 years, which would probably be the number of years of contract. Well, could I guess let me take that back. Before I say something is wrong, I double check that. But for a significant number of years, he's going to be their point guard in the future, and if he's the guy they think he could be, the Pistons will probably be pretty successful in the next couple of years. And he had a pretty good sample size there at the end of the season, of like 20 games, where he played really well once he got comfortable in Stan Van Gundy's system. So now that you have an entire offseason, full training camp, you hope he can build on that. So, him along with Andre Drummond, they're the key. If those two guys can be the players that people think they could be, the Pistons will be fine. If they're not the players, or if it turns out those players are overrated, the Pistons are struggling. They're hurting, and it's not going to turn out well for them.
And finally, Vince, bringing it full circle, when we talked earlier about the draft, you said about getting a small forward, but when you look at the draft as a whole, what would you constitute as a successful draft for them? Just getting a small forward? And what would you expect them to do in their second round as well?
Okay, well, again, that's one of those things where you're asking me to analyze something that hasn't happened yet. I know they want a small forward because you can look at their roster and say that they need a small forward. So if they get a small forward, I'm not going to be able to tell you, though, if the guy's successful until we watch him play. As far as the second-round pick, I guess you would look at maybe a big guy because they also need a backup center, and maybe not necessarily the guy would be the backup, but definitely the third center. They have three guys to play the front court position now, and Andre Drummond, Ilyasova, and Anthony Tolliver, and teams typically like to have six guys for the front court positions. So you can definitely see the Pistons using that second-round pick on a big guy.
Well, Vince, we thank you for your time this afternoon and for talking Pistons basketball with us here on the True Man Advantage podcast.
Thanks for doing it. Again, like I said, we can do it again next year. We can talk about whether all that stuff worked or not.
whether you had your side cap hat on or not. Yeah, absolutely.
Take care, man.
You too. Have a great day.